Why did you leave Portland State University?
I left because it became literally impossible to do what they hired me to do, which was to teach. My primary area was teaching critical thinking. That was my publication record. That's why they hired me. I taught a number of classes. That was a big class. I had a class of 120. It became impossible to teach that because the university was governed by ideology as opposed to teaching people what is the other side of the issue. How do you think clearly about things? They had very prescribed narratives of things you could and couldn't say. You'd get brought up on charges if you didn't say the right thing, or if you said something else, or it was an increasingly deranged and toxic environment. The reason I had to quit was because it wasn't merely that I was doing myself a disservice and couldn't teach. It was that the students were being harmed by it. They were actually being harmed. It was doing an injustice towards the students. That's ultimately why I had to quit. And I remember I walked into the dean's office. So the president, I tried so hard to get him to meet with me for 5 minutes. I sent him repeated emails, and his office told me he was too busy. I wanted 5 minutes. He wouldn't give it to me. So finally, I got to a dean, and I told the dean, and I was acutely aware that I had to stick to the 5 minutes. I told the dean that I was genuinely bothered that we made Greg Lukianov's FIRE, at the time it was, I think, Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, that Portland State University made, I can't remember what it was, like the top 10 or something. It made some list of worst schools for free speech. And I told him that I was disturbed by this and we needed to take steps to change this. And he said, without any sense of irony, sometimes it's a good, wait a second. He said, without any sense of irony, sometimes it's a good thing to be on those lists. And it totally blew my mind. It blew my mind because this was not a bug of the system. This is a feature. It's a feature to limit speech. This is not like everybody's in some ideological powwow. This is that you ought not to say certain things. You ought not to question certain conclusions. And it's good to not question your beliefs. It's good to not question these values.
So it seems to me like the world that you have left from a university perspective has now come to high school and middle school in part through this debate mechanism. You know, what's your understanding of that and how that's happened?
I'm exasperated and I'm frustrated. And I've been screaming about this stuff from 2012 and nobody listened. You know, it was Boghossian's a nutcase. He's a crank. He's a weirdo. To, okay, this is fringe departments in fringe universities. What's the issue? To, okay, these are some fringe departments, not really in the humanities. To, okay, it's the humanities. To, okay, it's the university system. To, it is ubiquitous in the society. It's just critical social justice, wokeism, whatever you want to call it. We know the nucleation point. We know it comes from the universities. We have a pretty good idea of how to stop it. Nobody listened. Nobody thought it would seep out. And now look at the utterly devastating consequence. Debate is just one manifestation of the ideology. There is complete and total ideological capture of our institutions. And by the way, that's why nobody trusts our institutions.
Well, and you know, the mechanism of debate, why is the mechanism of debate not just why is the mechanism of debate the antidote to this worldview?
I don't think it is the antidote. I think it's an antidote. Okay. I don't think there's any one silver bullet that's going to get out of. I don't think that there's I don't think there's one silver bullet that's going to get us out of this self-imposed catastrophe. So you need a kind of a dialectic, right? You need a kind of something that's pushing back on your ideas. The best way to think about that is a corrective mechanism. You have to have a corrective mechanism in your cognitions to help you figure out what's true and what's not true. So Here's another way we can tie this whole thing in together. The closer an activity is to reality, the more difficult it is to be faked. The farther it is from reality, the easier it is to fake. Speaking a foreign language cannot be faked. Playing an instrument, a musical instrument, cannot be faked. Doing jujitsu cannot be faked. Gender studies can be faked. Writing fake papers, that you can do that because there's no corrective mechanism there. There's no way to show that the things that you're writing about can be falsified or aren't true because you're forwarding narratives. So it's absent a corrective mechanism. Now bring that back to debate. So debate affords you an opportunity to have a corrective mechanism in your cognitions. It affords you a way to think precisely and clearly, to make arguments, to rebut things that you may not have believed, or you may not. It's an opportunity to make your ideas clear. It's a way to cut through the noise.
What is it about steel manning another perspective, the one that you don't hold? Like, why is that important, and what actually happens? Because that's a big part of what you do in your street epistemology. Why is that such an important ethic and practice?
Yeah, steel manning is vital. I'd almost go so far as to say that it's indispensable if you want to help people communicate across a divide. Part of the reason is, there are many reasons. Part of the reason is, I believe that it's incumbent upon us to make better arguments than the people who believe things that are antithetical to what we believe. Often these people, specifically in the case of wokeism or critical social justice, these are just extraordinarily mediocre minds. They happen to have latched on to ideas. So it's not like you need to give this expression a hermeneutic of charity, like a charitable interpretation. You don't need to do that at all. You just need to figure out, if they can't make, or more often than not, are unwilling to make arguments for why their positions are true, you should do it for them. In fact, it's incumbent upon you, it's morally incumbent upon you to make better arguments than they can for the positions that they ostensibly claim to hold. And the reason that the reason that that's important is that if you're really trying to figure out what's true, you need to look at beliefs and ideas that are different from your own. And you need to figure out, that's the word epistemology again. Why would someone believe this? Why would a rational, sane, thoughtful person think that this is true? Let me give you an example. We were in London, and we were talking to people about the Israeli-Palestinian situation. And one thing that we did so we write claims on the board, and then we have mats that people stand on: strongly agree, slightly agree, neutral, and on the other side. And one of the claims that we had was the two-state solution is the best solution. And we had one person walk to strongly agree, one person walk to strongly disagree. We give them whiteboards, and they write down the best reason they have for believing that. They had absolutely no clue whatsoever why someone would think that that's good or why someone would think that that's bad. So in these conversations, and particularly in debate, we get caught up in the conclusions. But what we should be doing is looking at the reasons that one holds. Why does somebody believe this? And is there reason, sufficient justification to warrant confidence at that level? So is their confidence calibrated correctly to the evidence? More often than not, the answer is no. People will overinflate, people will inflate their confidence beyond the warrant of the evidence. That's a problem. That's why we steel man. We steel man to see if we can figure out, okay, why would someone believe this? Here's what they believe. Is this sufficient reason to justify somebody believing that? Because if you don't do that, then you don't have a corrective mechanism. You don't have a way to correct your beliefs and your cognitions. It has to be something external to the system that comes in, a dialectic that causes you to challenge. Debate affords people an opportunity to do that. It affords people a way to make their ideas clear.
If you like this clip, we've got more where that came from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our new videos as they come out each week.